Hi everyone, my name is Kurt Dusek. I'm a solutions architect with GitLab, and today I'm going to be covering our integrations with IBM tools. So first place to start is we have an IBM Red Hat Sandbox project that we host on GitLab.com, and this holds really a lot of working examples, experimental projects, things we're looking to integrate, and it's a good place to get an understanding of what's being worked on and what's available. And this list may constantly change. The idea is it's going to grow and expand as we build out more integrations and deliver more content. So you'll see there's a handful of things here, demos and examples with Urban Code, things we've done at Think, some projects with Websphere, some projects with various OpenShift examples. But what I'm going to focus on today is just giving a demo of a Websphere project. And in this case, I'm going to just start from the top. This is an OpenLiberty kind of sample application we've loaded into a GitLab project. This is under our Websphere group. And the use case I'm going to show today is just kind of the typical GitLab example. So all of our work usually starts with an issue. And so that's what defines the work that needs to be done here. So we have a handful of issues of what we've been working on. And so what our application looks like is this. This is the prod. You'll see the domain, the subdomain is prod, and this kind of represents what you would see in production of our application. And so we have an issue here that we'll click into that's a request to update the header gradient and text. So we see that this is a purple gradient with some text here, and there's an ask in this issue for us to recreate this. So I've opened up a merge request here. You can see that this is related to this update header gradient and text. There's a little bit of a connection here. And this merge request screen is really where a lot of the collaboration happens. So I'm going to use the web IDE to make my edits here, but you can use this within any development tool, any local editor. You can make these changes, but this allows us to go into our file system. In this case, I've added this powered by GitLab tool. We can also do a diff on our code to see kind of how things are different as we're making changes through things. This review tab shows all of the changes related to this merge request. So we can see I've added powered by GitLab. And that's really the main change we've made here. So if I go back to my merge request screen, every time I make one of these commits, it's going to kick off this pipeline. And the pipeline is really where all of that build automation takes place. So if I expand my screen here, I have a couple different stages that are executed. I'm building the container image. I'm doing various scans. I'm building the microservice application. And I have all of these various components here of security. So I'm able to run a scan on the container. I'm able to run various scans on the application code itself. And we have this task here to deploy using UCD. So our GitLab CI job here, our pipeline, is actually calling out to Urban Code Deploy to handle the environment. And what we're doing on our side is we kick off that deployment, and then we can run all of these tests, and we can even run tests against the live running instance that was deployed via Urban Code. So we can do browser performance, which is like testing on the front end to see how the browser rendering performance looks like if we have basically maybe slow components or a slow front end, heavy front end. And then we have load performance, which is something that's going to be testing our backend API to see what is our performance of data throughput, right? So we have the front end and the back end performance testing. And then we have DAST, which is an dynamic application security test. And that runs against a running application, a running instance of your application. So we put this DAST job after we put the deploy job, just like we put these performance tests, right? We need a running instance of our application to do all of these types of tests, these performance and DAST tests. And then we have a few other things, right? We can do acceptance testing if we want to run that manually. And then ultimately, if we want to stop this instance, we can do that. And then that's a manual test if we want to, or the manual job stage, I should say, if we run that. So now, the output of all of those tests and scans is stored in a few different places. So we have, again, our load performance test metrics here. And if we click out and view our security scan, we can see the results of all of those different tests. Remember, we talked about DAST scanning. We talked about container scanning. We're doing things to detect secrets in the application. We're doing things to look at how the API may respond to garbage data and different things. So there's several different application tests that we're able to run and security tests that we can run. And when we run those, we get all of that result here is just under our security tab under our merge request. And we can filter this by the type of severity that the vulnerability is. In this case, it's good. We only have one critical vulnerability. Or we can filter and narrow down by the source of the tool that detected the vulnerability. So in this case, we can see what was brought up by the DAST scanner. And so if I want to respond to each one of these, there's several things I can do. So the first thing I can do is just get more info. What is the nature of this error? And so that little information button is going to tell me where did we encounter this? What is the nature of the vulnerability or security risk or flaw that we've introduced here? We know how to find it. We know how it was triggered. We can see, all of these different things that went into how the app was discovered. And then we have several links that will take us to how do we resolve this issue, right? So if you're a developer and you've come across this and you've actually inadvertently introduced a security vulnerability into the code, rather than having to run and find a security analyst to answer your questions and explain the issue or just come in and remediate it for you, there's tons of information here on exactly what was introduced, what it does, right? An explanation of what does this mean, and then ultimately guidance on where did this take place, and then how to resolve it. If you want to go in there. So if I were to go in and make a code change to my application here and then redeploy that resolved, say, one of these security vulnerabilities, then after we run this pipeline again and we run all these scans, this list is going to get updated and these items will disappear as we resolve them, right? So we're not introducing them into our code base, right? These are things that we've detected that are available. And so moving beyond just getting more information, we can do things like create an issue. So maybe some vulnerability has been discovered and it's maybe not something that we want to resolve right now, but we don't want to just forget about it. We don't want to just ignore that this exists, and we actually want to create an issue for it. So with literally one button click, you can see this was created just now by me. We have a full issue that outlines what the security vulnerability is, what its severity is, and then details that call out, specifically how we can resolve it, what we need to know, how to look into getting this fixed. And then we can say, okay, we want to fix this maybe in our next sprint, or maybe we want to hand this off to someone else. It's maybe something that's maybe a little bit out of our range or requires the application to be refactored. And so we can do things like that where we create an issue to address this in a bigger way down the road. Or if we find something that's maybe not really a big deal. So for example, the powered by link, right? This is going to say that it's powered by probably OpenLiberty or Websphere, right? We don't really care about that. So we can dismiss that as a vulnerability and it'll say, okay, that's not really a big deal. And then if we say we don't want to do that, we can undo this dismiss here and bring it back to being something that we should be concerned about and aware of. And so in addition to security, application security, that extends a little bit beyond just the actual application code. We're also doing license scanning. And so in this case, we're doing a detection, and this is an OpenLiberty app, so it's pretty common with Java apps, with Node.js apps, to include many different dependencies, third-party dependencies in your application to help you fast track your software development. You don't need to rewrite every single line of code, right, with these big developer ecosystems now. Now, the flip side of that is sometimes the licensing is not in line with what our organization wants to accept. There's certain friendly licenses like Apache 2, like GNU, GPL2, things like that are fairly straight up, but there may be something that's unlicensed. Either it has no license attached to it, or maybe it has an overly permissive license. Maybe it'll say, if this software is included or if this dependency is included in a distributable, that needs to be called out. The distributable needs to be made open source. There needs to be labeling and display. And those things are all perfectly valid for them to require in their software. And so the way we would handle that is by managing the compliance of those licenses. And what we can do is say there are certain licenses that we don't want to allow. And so we have a really long list of licenses that we can pull in and say, look, if you come across a CERN license, we can either allow or deny that. And that is a hard policy. There's no way to override this policy within the merge request. Again, the idea behind this is that it's a compliance tool. And so by, let's say, adding or violating that license policy, we're effectively violating our internal organizational policy. So we don't want to have exceptions to that, right? There's certain rules that should be set in stone. So in addition to this pipeline, what it's going to do, we have all these security scans, but those scans don't just live in the merge request. If we want to create greater visibility on our security posture of our application, we can do that. And so, and this is, I'm just in our general project. I'm outside of our merge request at the moment. And I can see the number of vulnerabilities over time that have been living in my application, right? This is just an overview account, right? So if somebody wants to get an understanding of quote unquote, how secure is our application, they can go to this vulnerability dashboard and get a very clear idea over time of, hey, right now we have 13 vulnerabilities in our application, but that maybe if that's changed over time, right? Depending on, if you had an active project, this line would be hopefully going down, right? As we trend and are not introducing new vulnerabilities. And if we want a detailed view of that report, we can pull up this vulnerability report, which is going to show us, again, those same numbers, but kind of more in that display of like what we saw in the merge request, right? Where we can filter on severity, we can filter by the tool, and then we can also look at activity, right? What's being done with this? This was something that was introduced in November of last year, and it needs triage. It hasn't been addressed yet. So we could say maybe this needs to be brought to someone's attention, right? Maybe we need to create an issue out of this, or we can address how we want to handle it. And there's several different things we can do. So again, like we have this create issue button, and then we would go and make our changes to overall bring our security down. And we have a very clear understanding of how we do this. And security, again, is more than just knowing what vulnerabilities are there. We can look at what dependencies we're using in our entire project. Again, this is a Java application. And so we can see, okay, we're using OpenSSL, we're using these particular versions. And then we can click in and see there are vulnerabilities that are in this specific dependency, right? And so these are medium severity in OpenSSL. So maybe there are things that we can accept as, hey, this is below our threshold of risk. And we're not super worried about this. But we may also want to sort these by severity. And so some of these may be low, right? Things that we trust, that we know that they're good. And then there may be things, again, like this one, GLibC, that has 4 vulnerabilities in there. And if we want to see what those are, there's a critical one. So maybe, again, that's something worth either updating our GLibC dependency or going in and maybe finding a replacement for this. And just like we have a roll-up of an application or project-wide roll-up of our security and vulnerability, just like we talked about with license compliance, the same thing here too. We have a very clear understanding of what licenses are being used in our project and which dependencies utilize those licenses. So if we, again, find something that we want to remove or replace, we can look at this list and then act accordingly based on what we need to do. So if we go back to this merge request, let's see here. This is the one I'm working on. So we've run this pipeline, we've done all this stuff, and what it also does, we talked about this security scan, is that it pushes out a deployment. So this is actually the app that we want to see. This is what we've deployed. We've changed the background header color, right? See that we see that there. And this here, you can see even the subdomain is review, whereas this one was prod. So this review application, it's a very handy link when we want to have, say, acceptance testing. Maybe our graphic designers want to have a look at how the color scheme came out, or maybe we're doing some accessibility testing and we want to make sure that all of our images have alt tags, or we're not making any bad practices for users that have screen readers or any other tooling on their application to test this. And so this is a super useful tool. We have a good understanding of how this deployed. We can also stop this environment, and that's going to call out to Urban code and tell it to stop this container runtime and shut this server down. We don't want to expose it publicly anymore. And we can actually configure our pipeline to stop it automatically once we complete this merge request. And even within the merge request, there's several things that we can do here. So in this case, the merge request is blocked. It's needs me to mark it as ready. And then when I do that, I would be able to merge this merge request. And we also can adds all sorts of different metadata to this. So if we want to do time tracking, create approvals, right? So in this case, since I'm the owner of this project, approval is optional. But if we wanted to get buy-in from our security evaluation team, or say our infrastructure team, if they want to have a look at this, or just your overall application architect, right? They want to see, go in and look at some of the nature of the changes that are being made and get a very clear understanding of, okay, this is what we're doing. I'm totally going to sign off on that. And if they want, they can open up a thread and say, okay, maybe there's a typo here, or maybe we want to review that. And again, all of those typical code review and collaboration tools, they all exist within the merge request. So it's more than automation. It's more than security scans. It's more than approvals. It's more than code discussion. It's all of those things combined. And when you have a single place to put all of those things together and then discuss them and review the commit history and give your approval, or maybe fork this or pass the link around, it becomes very easy to say, okay, we think this task, this update header gradient text, this is great. This is exactly what we want it to do. It ticks all the boxes. It's not introducing any security vulnerabilities or issues or challenges. And so we're going to go ahead and merge this into our project, and it's going to close this issue 881, right? So we know, okay, I'm satisfied with this change. I want to merge this change into production. So what it's going to do is merge the code into the main branch, and that's going to be part of our code at the moment here. And this merge request is merged, and the issue itself is closed. So that's it for me. I appreciate all of your time and attention during the video here. Feel free to reach out if you have any questions around our integrations or GitLab the product or what we're currently working on. I am available in our shared IBM GitLab Slack channels. You can also reach me via email, or if you visit the Sandbox, feel free to visit one of those projects, open an issue and tag me in it, and I'll do my best to respond in a timely manner. Thanks a lot. Have a good day.